At the Home Depot, we make it easy to turn your to-do list into a done list with our speedy delivery options. Need something in a hurry? We offer next day and even same day delivery on a wide variety of products. The best part is you can order straight from your couch. Our team is ready to help and get your order to you same day if it's placed by 4 p.m. on select products. When shopping online, filter by delivery to see availability options. Delivery at the speed you need, only at the Home Depot. Welcome back, everyone. Derek Rackley here, along with my guys, DJ Shockley and Dave Archer. This is the Falcons Audible, presented by AT&T, and a special draft recap show, okay? 2025 NFL Draft is now in the books, and fellas, now it is time to talk about, discuss, break down, welcome, all the different words I could throw out
Welcome.
the newest members of your 2025 Atlanta Falcons and the draft class. So before we get into these players, I got a quick question for you, and this is, I know these instructions are hard, DJ, for you. Sometimes these are really hard, okay? Fellas.
Here we go.
All right, right here.
So you're telling me Arch ain't never had an issue with this?
Arch has had an issue, too.
Okay.
He has, but I just like to pick on you a little bit more, okay? This is the number 3. Describe the Falcons draft. You did wear number 3, so this should be good for you. Yeah. Describe the Falcons draft in 3 words.
All right.
3.
Why you laughing? Why you smiling, bro? Why you smiling? I'm smiling like
He's from Georgia. He can't do that 3 words.
All right, here we go. Number 1, unforgettable.
Okay, unforgettable.
Wow. 2, significant.
Oh, dang.
Last word I got, dudes.
Okay.
Wow.
You went with 2 big ones
Did you just
to start.
Can you pick it up and drop it?
He went with 2 big words to start, then he just dropped.
So he didn't go with a phrase. He like picked words out of the dictionary and came out
did.
for that. Dang.
I followed directions. He said 3 words.
Let me ask you a question.
That's
Did
it.
you go into like a thesaurus or ChatGPT or anything like that? With some
No,
of
these
words?
straight off the brain.
Oh, these straight off.
the
Straight off the dome.
This
This TV guy now. This is a TV
You know what I'm
guy.
saying? It's the Georgia Dome.
All right, I wrote you down, Shock. Unforgettable,
Talk to him.
significant,
Talk to him.
dudes. All right, Arch, you're up.
Okay.
You're
Well,
up.
I don't know if I can top that, but I'm gonna twist it a little bit because I got a little conjunction
He
here.
already
Or
passed
a
3
little-
words. He's already passed 3
Well,
words.
no. I've got a word combined with a little hyphen in it. But I'm gonna go. I got a phrase for you. I'm not gonna go to the dictionary.
Okay.
Let's go hunt.
Okay. I'm good with that. That's 3. I mean, he's just saying the let's, right?
Yeah. I combined
still.
a couple words.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay.
Let's go hunt.
I like it.
You okay?
I like it.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay.
All right, y'all ready for mine?
Let's go, Rat. What you
I got 3.
All
Okay.
right.
Mine's a little bit of a sentence. All right. Defensive issues addressed. Okay. Mine's a little bit more simple.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But
Right to the
to
point. I
me,
like that.
this was a draft where the Falcons came in and said, we've got some things we got to get taken care of on that side of the ball. And I thought they took care of them.
True.
As we stand here right now, right? Obviously, this stuff has to play out on the field.
Right.
But I feel like defensive issues addressed in the draft, okay? I think I know. You said unforgettable, significant. What is your happiness, your content level of this Falcons draft?
It starts at number 15. I mean, we all sat here, and if my memory serves me correct, when we talked about who was going to take, I said Jalon Walker, and then I changed my mind because I thought he wouldn't be there.
You sound like Bernie Mac from
what I'm
the
saying?
Kings of Comedy.
He looks like he's about ready to get up on the pulpit. And
He
give us
just
a
about to
sermon.
start preaching.
Let everybody say amen.
I told you.
That's what happened. When we got Jalon Walker, the crowd, the fans said amen. So, yeah. Nah, but seriously, though, going at 15, I don't think anybody, probably in this building, thought Jalon Walker would be there. No. And you couple that with him being a guy that played at the University of Georgia. Everybody talked about that for years, and you finally get that guy, and he started to fall to you there, and you saw Michael Williams, another guy everybody was looking at, fall at 11 to the 49ers, and you're like, oh, man, there's a chance, there's a possibility. And then when it happened, I thought that was kind of significant that, for one, you get a guy of his caliber at that point. You get a guy who, has that pedigree and has played a bunch of good football over his career. And obviously, if you guys get a chance to talk to him, Arch, I know you probably talked to him already, but he is one of the best individuals you will meet let alone one of the top football players coming out in this draft. So it was significant in the point that you were able to get him, and then you turn around and get another guy, dude, that I felt the Falcons really wanted as well. Because obviously, if you go back into the first round to get a guy,
maybe the guy they wanted,
15, right? And I know that's a lot of the conversations. He was the guy, and if you watching the Falcons during the draft, you see them huddled together talking right there at 15. It takes them probably. I talked to Jalon about it, and he was like, "Man, I was sitting there." And I looked up and said 5 minutes, and nothing happened. And he was like, it was 3 minutes, and it was 2 minutes. Then he finally got the call. So that tells you they were going back and forth because they really were strong on our man James Pearce Jr. So it's significant in the point that you got two dudes in this draft who people were really highly on when it comes to edge rushers, and you were able to get both of those guys in the first round. Is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Arch, you were down at the Benz, right? And so
both of us were down.
You guys were both down there. As you and I were talking before the show, as these picks started to unfold, kind of talk to us about what your thoughts were when you were getting to 10, 12, 14, what was going through your mind?
I mean, well, in Shock was right across the field for me doing TV, so I'm sure you were living this too. But I'm looking. Okay, Jacksonville goes receiver. Or Cleveland, or they made the trade.
Yep.
So Cleveland is going defensive line or whatever it was, receiver, I guess. Vegas goes running back. Jets go offensive line. Carolina goes receiver. I'm going, what? Because that's where he was kind of. All of a sudden, New Orleans goes offensive line. I said, man, they're shoving both Georgia guys back towards Atlanta. I'm talking about Mykel Williams and Jalon Walker.
Yep.
So, the excitement level began to rise for me as a fan. So you knew Niners were going defense. It just was a matter, okay, they lost Greenlaw, the linebacker. You're thinking, are they going second level or are they going to go edge? So they go Mykel Williams. Well, you knew Dallas wasn't going there. And Miami, they took a D lineman. That was a good pick for them. You knew Indianapolis was going tight end. That had been talked about for like a month. You're thinking, oh, he's going to fall right in your lap.
Yeah.
And then I got nervous like Shock did. I'm looking at the clock and I'm going, what are we waiting? As soon as it clicked to Falcons are on the clock, pick is in. But obviously there was some jockeying going on there. Was Atlanta maybe talking to people around them? Could they slide back, maybe get a pick? There was a conversation about, because they had conversations with James Pearce Jr. and his mom the day before, and they talked about how he was their guy, and was 15 too rich for that pick, and they didn't feel that way. Were they going to still be able to get him? A lot of conversation there, but the adrenaline started flowing to me. Hair stood up on the back of my neck, but there were people standing around our broadcast area, much like yours, and you and I have been down there a number of years now. This is probably, we've been doing the draft show for the radio and Shock down there for TV. We've been doing it for 8 or 10 years now from the building. And, I mean, there's been mixed reactions to different people we've taken over the years. I have never heard a reaction like there was about 8,000 people in the building, probably somewhere in that neighborhood. When you say Shock?
Locked in, for sure.
When they said Jalon Walker, the place exploded. It was like like the team taking the field is what it sounded like. Guys were running and high-fiving. People were falling down on the field, tackling each other and stuff like that. There was a joy that overcame the bulk of the fan base there like I've never seen before. Right. It was really cool to be there for that.
Right. Before you go into yours, I want to ask Arch to kind of explain to people, because you went into something really interesting that I don't think people realize is, the Falcons are sitting there talking about who should they take, how they should go about it. And it's not all just, okay, do we want this guy? You have to talk to other teams to make sure that, okay, we want this guy. But also, how do we get back in to get this guy? So you got to have that trade partner as well. That was part of the conversation too, right? If that team was going to do the right thing and be able to come back and help them get back in the first round.
I think certainly Shock and Rack, they were discussing, okay, James Pearce was the guy they had kind of targeted, and whether that was going to be able to move back or what, they were probably had conversations already in place that Atlanta might not have was going to stay at 15. Maybe they already had a trade partner set up to where they were going to move back to take James Pearce Jr. And all of a sudden you look up and say, wait a minute, we got to pump our brakes on the trade because Jalon Walker's sitting here. So now how do we still, potentially negotiate that? Now maybe those discussions happened after they took Walker, but it probably took them a long time to talk to these other teams that they potentially maybe had trades already in place to move back.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, well, wait a minute, guys, we're gonna have to call off the trade because we've got a guy we really like right here at Jalon Walker.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of negotiation, a lot going on there, but really cool that they were able to end up with those two guys in the first round.
I think it's why they say, guys, that you always have to just take the draft on how it comes to you. Because as you mentioned, like, we're not going to get into the details of this, but the Shedeur Sanders situation, that ended up taking a player out of what most people thought was going to be a selection before Atlanta. Okay. Right. And then you mentioned the receiver, Teteroa McMillan. I think everybody thought he was going to be a first rounder. I don't think people thought he was going to be 8. Okay. And so that's potentially another player that came off the board earlier than maybe the Falcons, different draft experts, whoever you want to call it, anticipated. Now, I had called for a trade back to try to get Michael Williams, but I said the chances of it happening are slim just because I've seen him mocked anywhere from 8 to 28, and of course he ends up going, 11 to San Francisco. However, I did say on the pregame show, I said if Jalon Walker is sitting there at 15, you run, not walk to the podium to put that card in. And to your point, there was some discussion. So obviously they were potentially fielding different trade offers because I think on the television copy, it came pick is in at 1 minute left or somewhere around there, right?
I think it was less than that. I think it was inside 30 seconds.
Right. And so you're kind of sitting there thinking, like, well, what's going on here? What's taking so long? Jalon Walker's available. But to me, there had to have been multiple conversations going on whether or not there was a trade suitor for them to move back or move up. Whatever it ends up being, there was some stuff going on there.
Yeah.
However,
I certainly think that the conversation wasn't necessary, in my opinion. I don't know, did not talk to anybody with the Falcon brass here. But in my opinion, the conversation was ongoing as you were closing in on 15. And you obviously started looking out of the corner of your eye. Wait, Jalon Walker's still on the board. But Terry and everybody in the draft room are setting the table for them to move back potentially to take James Pearce Jr. if that's who they wanted. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they look up and they say, wait a minute, this guy's still in the room. This guy's still standing there.
Yep.
And so they had to make it. To me, they had to make some phone calls and pump the brakes on maybe a couple of teams that were looking to trade to 15. Mm-hmm. Said, wait a minute, our guy is still sitting there, and so we're going to have to maybe hold off on whatever we put together, for the last 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of the draft leading up to our 15th pick.
So we've kind of talked a little bit more like 30,000-foot level about both these guys. I want to dive into them a little bit more individually because, Shock, you're very close to the program. You're there each and every game. You get a chance to not only see Jalon Walker play on the field, you get a chance to talk to the head coach, the position coaches about him, arguably gotten a chance to talk to him on some or multiple occasions. So why don't you give us your breakdown of what Atlanta gets in Jalon Walker and what you know about the young man that maybe the average fan doesn't know about him?
I think you get one of the most complete players and individuals probably that you'll ever meet. I remember talking to a bunch of different scouts here and with other teams at the pro day, and a couple of them mentioned this is the kind of guy that you want to bring home to your daughter. And that speaks volumes for the type of person and player he is, that's the kind of individual that you want in your building. And another thing is, the guy was such a leader at the University of Georgia. And usually when you think about leaders, you think about the guys who are maybe those skill position guys or guys who maybe a quarterback or something like that. When he spoke, everybody listened, including the quarterback. There were times where I talked to Coach Smart and he would say, I can't get to the guys right now. Jalon, I need you to go get the guys in order. Those were the kind of things that you saw with him, particularly when you talk about stuff in the locker room, stuff you talk about outside the field and getting his guys together. But you talk about the things that they asked him to do. First off, when you think about a guy who's versatile means he has to be intelligent. Mm-hmm. The guy has to be smart. Mm-hmm. Because in this Kirby Smart defense with Glenn Schumann, the defense coordinator, I've sat there and listened to the multitude of things that they go through in a game plan, what they talk about with an opposing offense, and there's so much going on. And this guy is asked to play 3, 4, 5 positions within that defense with the calls, with the checks, with everything that happens, and then it happens within 2 or 3 seconds of a snap. Mm-hmm. And this guy, Jalon Walker, was asked to do that all year long. And this guy brought it every single week. I remember, obviously, Georgia had some games this season where they were down. They were not playing their best football. And this was one guy who I saw on the sideline was continuously walking up and down on the offense and the defensive side trying to get guys going. And this is a guy who hardly ever came off the field, played special teams and everything. Mm-hmm. He's one of those guys that you see come off and they put the big old 3X jersey on him when he out there running on special teams, and you got to take it off and run right back on the field. This guy was willing to give anything for his team, and I think it's a reason why he was one of the proven leaders of that team and why he's been on that for the last couple of years and why a lot of people felt the way they did about him coming out. And I think I talked to one of the higher brass here who said, we talked to him at the Combine, and they were blown away by just the conversation, by the way he held himself, by the way he walked into the room and shook every single person's hand in the room, and then the way he eloquently talked about things that were going on in their defense, and then just talked about life. So that tells you this is a guy that you're not going to worry about things going on off the field. This is a guy that absolutely is going to be one of those stalwarts of your defense for a long time. And when you get a chance to meet him out in public, in the community, you'll understand exactly what I'm saying of who the guy is.
Yeah, it's incredible to Shock made a ton of great points about the kid. I think, first of all, how he fits in your locker room and immediately becomes one of those guys that everybody wants to be around. He's got one of he feels like he's got that magnetism that pulls you want to be next to Jalon Walker. You want to hear what he has to say. So leadership, innate ability for a young man to come in with. But we talked about there were 13 players, Georgia players drafted in this draft, right? And another 4 or 5 guys went in were free agents. They're schooled so well at Georgia, especially on the defensive side of the football, to play. We talked about before we came on about how hard Georgia practices are. It's harder than the games. They're excited to get in the games because it's easier than what Kirby's putting them through in practice.
Absolutely.
So they're so well schooled. You had 3 Georgia players come off the board in the first round. Okay, in 3 different levels. That tells you they're not good at just the defensive line. They're good at linebacker. They're good in the back end. But when you talk about Jalon Walker, I thought the point you made right there at the end, he played all the special teams last year.
Yeah.
He didn't just play on defense and making plays off the edge and the linebacker and walking out in the slot and playing slot corner or whatever. He was playing all the special teams. He's on all the coverage units. I mean, that tells you all you want to know about the guy. The dude is off the charts. It was a great coup for us to end up with him at 15.
I wrote down 3 things, partly from what you said and some observations that I had. Number 1, I feel like he's kind of one of those alpha dogs, right? Mm-hmm. What you guys were talking about, like magnetism. People want to be next to him. People are interested in what he has to say, and they respond to what he has to say. That's a huge thing. Not only playing in the NFL, playing defense, and playing the linebacker position, because most people are turning around looking at the linebackers saying, "Get us set up in the right spot. What are we doing? How do we need to make a play?" Right? Somebody to get everybody else going. I made this comment we did a post-draft podcast late after the draft, after the first round, and I said, obviously Travis Hunter is probably the most versatile player in the draft, right? He's going to play offense and defense, but Atlanta might have got the second most versatile player because of what he can do for them. Yeah. Because of his ability to rush off the edge, because of his ability to cover people out in space, because of his ability to get back behind the defensive line, to fill an A gap, to fill a B gap, to blitz through. There's not too many guys that you feel comfortable can do all that and then shoulder the load mentally of all that stuff that goes along with playing like that. The last thing that you said, I picked this up, DJ, the most from his press conference after he was flown in. You mentioned the word eloquent. I was surprised at how well-spoken the young man was. He sits down in a press conference. It's just him up there. You never know how this is going to go. No offense, but some NFL players are not great interviews, if you guys know what I mean.
Sure.
But this guy got up there, and he just owned the situation, right? Super comfortable, could hear everything he had to say, excited, looking forward to the opportunity. So
and these are how many people in that room right there?
I don't know because I didn't see that. But
tons of people, tons. Over 30 people in that room, bro.
I think we would all agree that as it stands right now, you call it on paper, call it what you've seen on film, and Georgia Atlanta got themselves a star in Jalon Walker. Let's pivot and talk a little bit about James Pearce Jr. because this is the one that kind of maybe threw everybody for a little bit of a curveball, not only maybe us, but also in the NFL, as Atlanta ends up trading back into the first round ends up trading away their first-round pick last year. They do get a third-round pick in exchange for this move, but they go back in and they continue to address pass rush. And Arch, I'm going to start with you this time by trading back to get James Pearce Jr. in the first round, who many believed was maybe one of the most athletically gifted pass rushers in this class. Once again, you're down at Mercedes-Benz Stadium and you hear trade, Atlanta is on the clock. Your knee-jerk reaction was what?
Yeah, you got to be kidding me. We froze and started looking at the camera, because we knew we didn't have any draft capital. Yeah. And so you think, okay, it's got to be something from next year. Now, yeah, steep price to pay that number one pick. But if Atlanta is going the direction they feel like they're going, and that pick is going to be at the back end of the first round, not to dispel what a first round draft pick means, because look here, we're getting James Pearce at 26, so you can obviously get really good players at the back end. But I thought that it just showed the aggressiveness. That's who Terry is. That's who this Falcon organization is. If they see a guy, they spent a ton of time with. In fact, they spent more time with James Pearce Jr. than they did with Jalon Walker. Now, they went over and saw Georgia and talked to Jalon, and you guys, all the things you said about Jalon Walker, obviously he bleeds them out, the leadership and all the things. But they wanted to spend time with James Pearce because there was some questions. Okay, does he go hard all the time? Does he do this, that, or the other? There was some question. And so they went and sat down with him and his mom. And they visited with him up until right the day before the draft, right, Shock? And they spent a lot of time feeling comfortable about the fact that this was probably going to be their first-round pick. And it might have been, like you suggested, wasn't Mykel Williams they traded back for. They traded back to get him. Yeah. I think that was what was in the play here. But then they said, wait a minute, we got to go get – that was our guy to begin with. We got to go get him. I thought, you got to be kidding. You doubled down. You just went and like you said, addressed defensive issues. That's exactly what they did. And think about Jeff Ulbrich. Will McDonald was drafted at Iowa State 2 years ago. Almost the exact same size. 6'4", about 240. Actually, Pearce is a little bit bigger. Yeah. Think about Leonard Floyd. Almost the same guy. Yeah. Is slim, come off the edge, and all Floyd's done is have 48.5 sacks in his last 5 seasons, including 8.5 last year. They thought that this guy's built very similar to that, a very similar type player. So you're talking about two body types, one that Raheem had worked with in L.A., one that Ulbrich had worked with in New York, and both were explosive. I think Will McDonald had, 10 sacks this year for the Jets? This is a dude very similar, and so they get a guy that now is going to be able to watch one of the really good pass rushers in the league over the last 5 seasons in Leonard Floyd, and kind of tutor under him. And also maybe all of a sudden you look up and one's on one side and one's on the other side, and oh, by the way, Jalon Walker and Caden Ellis are stacked in behind. Block somebody. I mean, they're coming.
Figure that out.
So. Yeah. I think the excitement, I can get chills a little bit thinking about what these two guys could be. But James Pearce Jr. in particular, we need to give him his kudos. This guy was a really good player, 17.5 sacks over his last 2 seasons, 7.5 a year ago, ran 4.47. You talk about a guy that can get around the edge. Yeah. Shock, you saw it in person. Yeah. And you talk about being able to close. And all this conversation about him being too thin in the hips and all that kind of stuff, I've thrown tape on where he can defend the edge as well. Mm-hmm. He's got long arms, can keep himself leveraged to the outside and defend the edge too. So, excitement about this guy.
DJ, what type of player do you feel like James Pearce is and is coming to the Falcons to be?
Arch was spot on about everything that he brings to the table, and it's interesting to watch, like Arch just mentioned, some of the body types and things that come along with the guys that they want in this defense. And you think about you're gonna have a Braylon Trice coming back, a bigger size guy body, and then Jalon Walker is kind of an in-betweener guy as well. But you're talking about having multiple guys who, if you put on the edge with James Pearce as well, all these guys have been taught, if you give me one-on-one, there's no way you're going to block me. And you're talking about putting all these guys on the field at the same time, it makes it very tough to kind of defend. But when you think about Pearce, I got a chance to see him last couple of years, actually, when he came up here and we talked. Actually, was talking to him about it, and he was just talking about how he enjoys the fact that he gets the chance to just go rush the quarterback. And he said the only thing that I want to do is put the quarterback on the ground. Like, I wake up and say, you know what, how can I beat this guy? And he individually talked to me about, there's things that I watch with tackles. There's things I watch with guards. There's things that give me little small clues that help me. And you talk about having a guy like Floyd who's been around. He's going to be able to absolutely kind of just, be a sponge to those guys and pick up on some of the things that they are doing. But he is one of those players that once you get him out there, you're going to see him. And one thing that surprised me was I didn't know he was as big as he was. I mean, he's like 6'5", 250, and he is all of it. And when I seen him when Georgia played Tennessee, I mean, he was a good-sized dude because obviously everybody's out there huge. But then when I saw him when he walked in the building, I was like, this dude has the size. This guy has the demeanor as well that goes along with it. I think the Falcons are going to be really excited. Fans should be really excited about what this guy is capable of. And he's going to get in the room with all these other alpha dogs, and he's an alpha too. He's going to want to go get it too.
Think about what has hurt Atlanta over the last couple of seasons, guys. We talked about being able to get to the passer, and we're at the bottom of the rail when it went to last year, the last 5 years, last 10 years. With all that being said, think about what's going on at the quarterback position, and then some of the guys you're going to – Jaden Daniels is going to be here next year. You got the big kid from Buffalo going to come down here, the defending MVP.
Josh Allen.
And those guys creating outside of the realm of what you're doing offensively. Sure, they can operate within the confines, but think about the drive at the end in overtime against and even in the second half against Washington a year ago, where Jaden Daniels kind of took over and started running around.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden, you've got Caden Ellis on the field, you've got Jalon Walker on the field, you got James Pearce Jr. on the field, maybe even Leonard Floyd that's kind of rejuvenated because he's not having to play so many snaps. You've got guys that can run everywhere on the field. Talk about tracking guys down and getting them on the ground, get you off the field. Don't let quarterbacks extend plays. You got a bunch of guys that can, like I said, let's go hunt.
And it's a good point because you think about two guys that's in your own division you're going to see in Bryce Young and Baker Mayfield. And you talk about two of the craftiest guys within the pocket, outside the pocket that wants to make plays. It's a direct result of what those guys can do.
Look, to win in the NFL, and I'm going to make this analogy, you got to have tools in the toolbox, okay? And some could say that's scheme, some could say that's, plays, trick play, whatever you want to call it. To me, tools in the toolbox means players that can go out and make plays for you, right? Yep. So we talked about the pass rushers. Atlanta Falcons got two really good tools in addition to Morgan Fox and Leonard Floyd and Caden Ellis and all those other guys that are going to be on that defensive side of the ball. You've now got some tools to do some things with on the field next year. Speaking of tools, let's go back into the back end, as you call it, Arch. Two other picks that were brought in, and I'm going to kind of throw this out to you guys to talk freely about whoever ends up coming to you first. Third round, Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame. Trade there, a safety. Interesting stat I saw about him, along with Travis Hunter, the only two unanimous first-team All-Americans each of the last 2 years.
Yep.
That's crazy to think that. That's crazy to think that. There's
just
the
those
only
two
guys.
Okay.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So he is now going to be wearing an Atlanta Falcons jersey. And then to me, one of the, and I'm not going to call him wild card because he's a really good player. I actually wrote him down in our pre-draft stuff when I was talking about defensive backs. I have cornerbacks here, but you see that name that I have written? This was pre-draft. Billy Bowman Jr., because I've seen him a few times, and this kid is impressive to me. He's got instincts. He is physical now. He will come up and hit you like it is your. I had the Missouri-Oklahoma game last year in Missouri, and he had I think he picked up a fumble, and ran it back for a touchdown in that game. And he's always around the football. And he's one of those guys that's going to talk a little trash. He's going to get in your face, and he don't care.
Yeah.
And so when the Falcons got him, I said, I completely understand that pick because that's the player that I saw on the field, just a guy that's always around the football. So with those two players in the back end, which one sticks out to you, and what does you bring to this organization?
I mean, I think you did a great job talking about Bowman because obviously Bowman is one of those guys you look at it, and we always talk about versatility and the things that he can do and where he can play. And you watch the tape, this guy has all those instincts. He has everything you talk about. But I'm going to go with Xavier Watts, too. Xavier Watts, I got a chance to see him when Georgia played him in the Sugar Bowl, and he was similar, a guy who was always around the football. Somewhere you look, you see that 0 number somewhere around the football. And you're talking about 13 interceptions in the last 2 years. And the other thing that sticks out to me is we talk about defensive backs. A lot of guys say, oh, maybe they can't catch the football. This guy catches football, but he wants to make something happen with it. Dude had 273 yards worth of interception yards throughout his career. Led the conference the last 2 years, like I mentioned, the interceptions. But the other thing that I like about Xavier Watts, once I kind of dove into him a little bit more, was the kid has a why. And I'll explain that for the fans who maybe not know his story. His dad was paralyzed, and he talks about playing for his dad living through him because of the things that has happened. And when he talked about it, you could see that every single thing he does is to make his parents proud. Mom and dad, he said, I can't leave out mom, but he also mentioned his dad and the things that he's gone through. So it tells you the kid has a why. The kid understands why he plays this game. And when he thinks about quitting, when he thinks about maybe not going extra hard, he thinks about what his dad had to go through in his situation. So I love the fact the kid has a why. He's similar to Bowman, has the instincts, has the ability to be all over the field, can play multiple positions for you. Really good size, 6'2", 203. And he's going to be one of those guys you look back in that secondary and say, okay, it's going to be a battle. He's not going to come in here and just give it up. He's going to give everybody what you want. And the best thing about it is they got a dude back there that wears the number 3 that they all can just lean on.
Yeah.
You just turn on the tape and watch what number 3 has done in his career, and you say, you know what? This fits perfectly for the guys that we have to be able to replicate what this guy does on a daily basis. You know you're in a good spot when you being led by the guy named Jesse Bates.
Yeah.
Arch, Terry Fontenot talked about it in his press conference. He said there was a text exchange between him and Jerry Gray. And Jerry Gray basically sent something to him about, you're doing a really good job in the draft, but what have you done for me lately? Basically meaning, I'm back here in the secondary, bring me some tools, okay? What kind of tools does Jerry Gray and the rest of this Falcons defense get in that back end?
Well, I talked about let's go hunt to start off with, and that means go get the quarterback, but also means go hunt the football.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, when was the last time that a team drafted 2 guys and you say 24 career interceptions?
I know.
Bowman's got 11 interceptions. You mentioned Watts at 13 interceptions, and they're not just picking it off. You guys talked about it. Bowman had 3 interception returns for touchdowns in 23. Watts has had a couple interception returns for touchdowns. They're not just looking, and Watts a former receiver that now is a defensive back, played a little bit of nickel linebacker, so the versatility's there. Obviously the ball skills are there. You mentioned the toughness of Billy Bowman. Billy Bowman, I remember watching specifically OU's on the road in their first game at BYU in 23. BYU had just joined the Big 12 conference, and BYU is going to beat Oklahoma. Billy Bowman picks off a pass at the goal line. Go back and pull it up. You can pull it up on YouTube. Goes 100 with it for a touchdown to win the game for OU. That's who he is. But 5'10", 190, you think, how physical can he be? 17 reps at 225 for Billy Bowman. So that tells you he's packing some punch, right? He's a dad's, his dad is a high school football coach, so well-schooled there, kind of the discipline that you're looking for there. He plays at multiple levels. I think this guy is going to compete day one to be your nickel corner. I think there's going to be a heck of a competition there, whether it's D. Alf or whoever else is in there fighting for that job. That's what you're looking for from a competition standpoint. You mentioned the Sugar Bowl. Watts was the MVP, defensive MVP of the Sugar Bowl. Had 7 tackles in that game and a tackle for loss. He was a team captain at Notre Dame. We know how much that means to be a team captain at one of these venerable programs, whether it's Georgia or Notre Dame or something like that. They don't just give those opportunities away. Right. So you're talking about 2 guys that are going to compete, and they're going to come in, and they're not just going to be special teams players, which I think they will be. And Marquise Williams has got to be ecstatic about getting 2 athletes like this to play on special teams. But they're coming in, they're going to lay it on the line to go compete. Both guys mentioned, and Watts in particular mentioned Jesse Bates. They mentioned that was a guy that they'd like to model their game after. And just a little caveat to throw in, you talk about competition now. Think about the competition at Billy Bowman's house. His wife is Jada Coleman, maybe one of the best softball players in the country.
She got 4 natties, dude. She got 4 natties.
So you talk about
straight.
If he comes home feeling a little down about himself, Jada's going, no, that ain't working around here, baby.
And she's now playing professionally. You talk about why. He's got to continue to play well just to say that he's the best athlete in his household.
She plays center field. She played center field on 4 national championships in Oklahoma.
She
can go.
Now.
Oh, yeah, she can go now. So he ain't coming home dragging tail or anything like that because Jada's going to be on him. So
he ain't coming home complaining either because she's going to be like, dude, until you got 4 rings. No, she's probably got like 7 from conference championships too. Like, go work hard to get some of this, okay? So, but very interesting story behind that. Jada Coleman, one of the best center fielders played in recent history for Patty Gasso's Oklahoma Sooners. All right, so that kind of wraps up the first 4 rounds, fellas. Let's go one more draft pick, and they went offense. Finally, 7th round, offensive lineman Jack Nelson, tackle coming out of Wisconsin, 6'7", 318, 4-year starters. I think we all know that Wisconsin has been one of those pillars when it comes to offensive linemen. Yeah. This goes all the way back to the Barry Alvarez days, guys. You got to go back to the 90s when they started pumping out offensive linemen, and it was just seemingly like first round after first round after first round. Well, Nelson comes in the 7th round, but what does he bring depth-wise to this offensive line?
Yeah, he brings experience, 50 career starts. You just talked about at RAC. He started 13 games at right guard. He started 37 games at left tackle. That tells you he has the versatility. He played right side in the interior, played left side, and we know that really difficult position to play at left tackle. Guys rushing off the edge. By the way, he faced some pretty good competition in the Big Ten coming off the edge. So you love the tools that he comes to the table with. He's a big dude that looks like he can transition inside or outside. The conversation about him is really good in the zone blocking scheme. Yep. Does an outstanding job of getting lateral and up to the second level. Maybe challenged a bit from time to time from a pass protection standpoint. That's why it made me make sense to move him inside and play in that guard position where he can potentially be protected on one side or the other. But it's a big-bodied dude that has a tremendous amount of playtime experience that comes in. We've seen that kind of transition to other positions. Think about some of these quarterbacks that are coming in that have played more college football that are adapting, the Brock Purdy's and some of those people of the world. It certainly would apply to an offensive lineman as well.
Well, and DJ, he's got 2 pretty good veteran tackles that he can learn from if he does. I mean, I see 6'7", 320, and I see that's a tackle in the NFL, right? Yeah. You could play guard, yes, but to me, those are measurables to get ready to play one of the tackle positions. But again, we hope, health-wise, that he doesn't have to start this year. So he's got 2 veterans that he can learn from for maybe call it a season, if you will, to try to get up to speed, watch tape, how NFL pass rushers try to attack tackles in the NFL, and how do you combat that. So he's another tool in the toolbox to bring some depth to this offensive line.
Which is a great point because we talked about Jesse Bates and his experience on the back end and what he can add to a young defensive group. You talk about Caleb McGarry and Jake Matthews, 2 guys who have played tons of football. We know Jake Matthews just got another deal for what he's done, and consistency in which he's done it with tells you everything you need to know. And you're going to have a guy come in here and sit and play. One thing that I thought about while Arch was talking was you think about all 5 of these draft picks and where they played and how much they played. You're talking about Georgia, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Wisconsin. I mean, come on. These guys have played major college football. And I looked up, Arch just mentioned Jack had 50 starts. Billy Bowman played all 4 years. Xavier Watts, 55 games in college. I mean, these guys are not coming in here like we see sometimes, this guy only played 13 games or this guy just played 1. These dudes have played a ton of football in major college football, and it speaks volumes about where they are now. And you know they're going to come in with experience. They're going to come in humble because they know what it feels like to play and not play at this level. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how these guys adapt to what's going on. But I think all these guys will fit the mold really well and find their niche within this team. And all these guys, I think, are solid players and going to be fun for this Falcons organization.
Yeah, Falcons have agreed to terms with another 11 undrafted free agents, and we may end up getting into a discussion about those guys as the time ends up leading up to training camp and everything. But in the interest of time, let's go ahead and kind of wrap this up. Before we do, fellas.
You're not going to let Arch talk about his Iowa State guy?
Well, I mean, do you want to, Arch?
Yeah, I can wait. I can save it. Malik Verdon, the safety, he comes in. He played with a cast on his arm the whole year. And he's 6'3.5", 219 pounds, but it's a crowded safety room, right? He comes in. Maybe this is a guy that he was second team All Big 12 this last year. There's a number of things we can dive into. Kobe Bryant, the football player, not the basketball.
Kobe with a C.
Kobe Bryant, a 3-time first team All Big 12
Another
corner,
guy with
did not get picked. He was projected as a 6th-round pick. There's a number of guys, and we could dive into it another time, like you said.
Nick Nash with all the receiver records. I mean, come on, it's dudes in
well,
it.
yeah, you're talking about Joshua Gray out of Oregon State, 56 career starts on the offensive line for the Beavers at Oregon State, played tackle and guard. This guy he also projects as a center. In fact, there were a number of guys had him rated as the top 6 or 7 centers coming out in college, moving him inside. He was projected as a 5th or 6th round pick. So great job by Terry and the staff to go get some guys to add to that, to add to the competition as undrafted guys.
Terry talked about this in his pre-draft press conference. They call it the 8th round, right? The undrafted free agents. But he said that this year specifically was such a big, a deep draft when it comes to what they felt like were draftable players, but more players than there were draft slots.
True.
Right? So these are players that we may end up talking a lot more as we get into camp, because somebody's going to end up jumping off the page that came out of this undrafted free agent crew, and we end up talking about them during the preseason. I'm the one to talk. I was an undrafted free agent myself. These guys are very, very important to the success of the National Football League. Sometimes you find your gems.
What are you saying? Essentially, you were first. You were.
No, I'm saying that's pretty close to free agent. I mean, it was like, all right, let's go ahead and draft. You know what I'm saying?
No, that's not what they were doing. They were saying, hey, let's get the SEC MVP and let him come in here.
That's why you might do it.
Yeah.
All right, hey, before we go, real quick, because everybody does it, and I'm going to ask you guys to do it. Can you give us a grade on the draft for the Falcons? Can you give us a grade?
I'm going to give the Falcons an A. I'm going to be honest. It was a draft that for all the things that we already talked about, and I thought you addressed all the major needs that you had. And what's the point of the draft is getting quality guys in spots that you need. What else you need to say?
Like it. He's got an A. What you got, Arch?
I don't think I could go. I don't want to give the same grade. Shock.
You got
so
I'll go A.
I'll go A minus.
If it fit.
No, there's no question. You had an idea of what you wanted to go do in the draft. Did your needs meet the levels at which you had these guys graded?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I think you exceeded that. Walker falls to you. Pearce is there, and he's your guy anyway. So you get both, and then 2 safeties.
The caliber.
The 2 guys that you got coming in are all conference players, all American. You mentioned Watts. Consensus All-American, the only other guy, Travis Hunter. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about 2 guys that are going to come in and compete. I almost wonder, I'm going to ask you guys, 2016, we had 4 rookies start on the defense. They went to the Super Bowl, okay? And it was a defense. It was a mixed bag here and there, but 4 rookies contributed on that. You could make an argument that you got 4 guys that could come in and potentially start on this defense.
Right.
That's pretty damn good, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Maybe they don't even all start, but I think all of them play a lot.
Yeah.
Right. Like rotational, especially pass rushers these days are keep them fresh, bring them in, third down, so on and so forth. I'm going to give the Falcons a B+ on the draft, but this is one to where when the season comes around next year, my grade can be elevated, because if James Pearce ends up having about 8.5 sacks
elevate
next year,
our grade? Well,
you didn't say it. You didn't qualify it. I'm qualifying my grade. Okay, we make up rules along the way here on Falcons Audible, presented by AT&T.
While you and I were out playing in the yard stuff, he was doing AP classes to get himself advanced.
The same guy before the draft had the numbers.
The AP credit can boost the grade up if James Pearce ends up with 8+ sacks next year.
That's the only way you can get into Minnesota. That's the only way you can get into Minnesota. That's all right.
Hey, that's going to do it with Falcons Audible, presented by AT&T. Our post-draft wrap-up of the newest members of the 2025 Atlanta Falcons. I'm Derek Rackley, Dave Archer, DJ Shockley. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back hopefully very soon to give you more content about the Atlanta Falcons and the NFL. Thanks for joining us, everybody.